I want you to close your eyes for a second and just picture a beach. Cold wind, dark water lapping at the stones. Maybe it's Lindisfarne in the late 8th century.
Oh, setting the scene. I like it.
Yeah, right. So imagine the tension. You're looking out at the horizon, and out of the fog comes this long ship. And the warriors on that ship, the men who are about to jump out onto the sand, they worship a supreme deity.
And not just any deity, right?
Exactly. I want you to imagine the chief god of their entire pantheon, but throw away all your modern ideas of what a god is. Imagine an all-powerful ruler who willingly walks up to a sacred well, reaches up to his own face, and just violently rips out his own eye.
Just right there on the spot.
Right on the spot, not in the heat of battle, not by some tragic accident. He does it deliberately, calmly. It's a transactional payment. He drops that eye into the dark water just to get a single sip of secret knowledge.
Which is incredibly metal, by the way.
It is so metal. And if that's not crazy enough for you, imagine the same god a little later on deciding there's another secret he absolutely has to know. So he takes his own spear, drives it deep into his own side, and hangs himself from the branches of a cosmic tree.
Yggdrasil.
Yeah, Yggdrasil. And he just hangs there, bleeding, swaying in the freezing void for 9 agonizing days and 9 starving nights. Like, absolutely no food, no water, no help coming, all just to learn a secret.
It's a really jarring imagery. But that imagery isn't just metal for the sake of being metal. It is the absolute prerequisite for understanding the Norse worldview.
Right. Welcome to this deep dive, by the way. Today, we are tearing apart the source material to look at the true nature of Odin the Allfather.
And to understand Odin, you really have to start with the blood, the desperation, and the pain. I mean, if you try to view him through the lens of a benevolent skyfather or some morally perfect creator, you will misunderstand everything about him.
Completely. The mission of this deep dive is to strip away those sanitized modern misconceptions. Because the sources we have, they show a deeply flawed, terrified, and just unbelievably cunning strategist.
Yeah, a god who is utterly obsessed with gathering information and hoarding warriors for apocalyptic war. He already knows he's going to lose.
He already knows. That's the craziest part to me. It fundamentally rewires how you think about divine authority. Because when you look at the mechanics of how Odin operates, it breaks every rule we expect from a pantheon leader, right?
Oh, absolutely. He doesn't rule from his high-throned healed scalp because he's this bastion of moral perfection. The sources are incredibly explicit. He lies, he cheats.
He breaks solemn oaths.
He breaks oaths constantly. He actively manipulates everyone around him.
But the thing that fascinated me the most, and we really need to slow down on this idea because it's so counterintuitive, is the specific type of magic he uses. He practices something called seer.
Right, seer.
And from what I understand, reading the material, for a Norse man, let alone the supreme god of masculinity and war-practicing seer, was considered this extreme cultural taboo, like a huge deal.
It was the ultimate taboo. I mean, in Norse society, there was this concept called ergi, which roughly translates to being unmanly or shameful or submissive.
Okay.
And seer was a form of magic associated with weaving and fate. It was traditionally practiced almost exclusively by women. It involved manipulating the minds of others, altering destiny.
Working from the shadows.
Exactly. Working from the shadows rather than facing an enemy head-on in honorable combat.
Which is everything a Viking warrior is supposed to be against.
Right. For a mortal Viking man to be accused of ergi was a deadly insult. Like it was legally recognized grounds for a duel to the death.
Wow.
Yet the Allfather, the chief god of this hyper-masculine warrior culture, is the supreme master of this exact type of shameful magic.
So wait. The very people worshiping him, the guys jumping off that long ship at Lindisfarne, they would literally execute someone in their own village for acting the way their god acts.
Yes.
That is a massive cognitive dissonance. It really forces you to rethink what his authority is actually based on. I mean, if Zeus is the CEO who fires you with a thunderbolt, and the god of Abrahamic traditions is the ultimate moral judge, Odin is. He's like a desperate Black Ops intelligence director.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right. He's running a road agency. He's willing to break every international law, cross every moral boundary, sacrifice his own field agents just to stop a doomsday plot.
Yeah, he isn't the god of being strong or being good. He's the god of doing whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. But if he's so morally compromised, how did the Norse justify worshiping him?
Well, you have to put yourself in the mindset of a 9th century Norseman. You know, they lived in a harsh, unforgiving environment. Survival often meant making agonizing, brutal choices.
It wasn't an easy life.
No, not at all. They didn't value a god who preached passive morality from a place of safety. They valued a god who looked at an unwinnable, catastrophic situation, found the hidden angle, and paid the terrible price to exploit it.
And Odin embracing that ergi, that taboo magic.
It proves to his followers that there is absolutely nothing he won't do to gain an advantage. His lack of conventional honor is exactly what makes him so terrifyingly effective.
Right. And that willingness to pay the terrible price, it brings us right back to the physical sacrifices we started with. Because he doesn't just sacrifice his social standing, he sacrifices his own body.
In extremely violent ways.
Very violent. Let's dig into the mechanics of what actually happens at the Well of Mimir. So this well sits beneath the roots of the world tree, Yggdrasil. The guardian of the well, Mimir, he demands an eye for a single drink.
A heavy price.
Yeah, but reading the sources, it's not just a physical mutilation, is it? It's like a structural trade-off.
It is a profound trade-off. Think about the physics of sight in this context. By giving up his eye, Odin sacrifices half of his outer sight. His ability to perceive the surface of the physical, mundane world.
Okay.
And in exchange, the water grants him inner sight. He gains the ability to perceive the deep, hidden, structural truths of the cosmos.
So the missing eye isn't a battle scar. It's not like he lost it fighting a giant.
No. It is a permanent, self-inflicted monument to his core philosophy, which is that true wisdom is never free. The universe always demands collateral.
He literally makes himself half blind in our reality so he can see perfectly in the hidden reality. That's wild.
It's all about that sacrifice.
But the well was just for knowledge, right?
Mm-mm.
The second sacrifice on the world tree, the hanging, that is for raw power. He wants the secret of the runes. And we really need to clarify what the runes actually are here.
Yeah, because people misunderstand this all the time.
Right. If you're picturing like a dusty alphabet used to write on runestones, you are completely missing the point. The sources describe the runes as the magical source code of reality.
Exactly.
If you understand them, you can rewrite the universe's operating system. You can heal fatal wounds, blunt enemy blades, bind demons, and literally raise the dead.
And you cannot acquire root access to the universe's operating system just by studying some books.
No.
The runes are hidden in the fabric of death itself. So to grasp them, Odin has to push his consciousness across the threshold of mortality.
Which brings us to the hanging.
Right. He pierces himself with his own spear Gungnir. He hangs from Yggdrasil, which, by the way, translates poetically to Odin's horse. It's a grim kenning for the gallows.
Odin's horse.
Yeah. And he hangs there for 9 days, 9 nights. He's bleeding out, hallucinating from starvation and dehydration. And the poem Havamal captures the most chilling detail of this entire ritual. It says he was given to Odin, myself to myself.
Myself to myself. That specific phrase is a total mind bender. I mean, it's like a hacker deliberately inducing a near-death physical state, flatlining their own heart just long enough to bypass a biometric firewall and steal the master passwords of existence.
That's a great way to think about it.
But wait, let me push back here for a second. Because looking at the imagery, a divine figure pierced in the side by a spear, hanging on a wooden structure for days to achieve some cosmic victory. I mean, that sounds remarkably like the crucifixion of Jesus.
Sure, yeah.
Is there a historical bleed over here? Did the Norse just lift this from Christianity?
It's an unavoidable comparison,
Yeah.
and scholars have debated the extent of Christian influence on the later transcriptions of Norse myth for centuries. I mean, the texts we have were written down by Christians much later.
Right, like Snorri Sturluson.
Exactly. But if you look at the underlying mechanism of the act, the two sacrifices are structurally opposed.
How?
Well, when you look at the Christian crucifixion, the sacrifice is entirely altruistic. The divine figure suffers to absorb the sins of humanity, offering universal salvation. Odin's sacrifice is entirely narcissistic and utilitarian.
He's not saving anyone but himself.
He's not even saving himself, really. He is violently extracting a weapon from the universe to use in his own desperate preparations for war. He endures the torture to seize power, plain and simple.
So the suffering isn't an act of grace for mankind.
No, not at all. It is a hack to get the cosmic cheat codes. It is purely self-serving.
Okay, so we have a god who routinely mutilates himself and starves himself to the brink of death for tactical advantages, which it makes this next part of the lore feel almost absurd.
You mean the poetry?
Yes. How does this grim, bleeding god of espionage and war also end up being the patron god of poetry? I mean, usually those are two very different departments in mythology, right? Why is the guy who hangs himself on a tree the same guy you pray to when you want to write a beautiful song?
To understand that, you have to understand the Norse conception of poetry and the the really bizarre, violent origin of how Odin actually acquired it. The myth of the mead of poetry is essentially the greatest cosmic heist story ever told.
I love this story so much.
It starts with a being named Kvasir, who was created from the spit of all the gods and was the wisest being in existence.
Oh.
Two dwarves end up murdering Kvasir. They drain his blood into vats, and they mix it with honey.
Let's just pause there for a second. Let that land. They mix blood and honey and let it ferment. I mean, the metaphor there is incredible.
It really is.
Because fermentation is essentially controlled decay that produces an intoxicant. So they take the blood of pure wisdom, mix it with sweetness, let it ferment, and it becomes a mead that turns anyone who drinks it into a master poet or scholar.
Exactly. But the dwarves don't keep it. They lose it to a giant named Suttung, who locks it inside a literal mountain, guarded by his daughter, Gunnlod.
And this is where Odin's mastery of deception, that seer we talked about, comes into play. Because he doesn't raise an army and siege the mountain, does he?
No. He goes undercover.
Yeah.
He takes the name Bolberk, which translates directly to evildoer or worker of misfortune.
Which, by the way, is an insane alias to use if you're trying to con people. Like, hi, my name is literally evildoer. Can I work for you?
It just speaks to his audacity.
Right.
So as Bolverk, he approaches 9 of the giant servants who are cutting hay in a field. He sharpens their scythes with this magical whetstone that works so well they all want to buy it from him.
Okay.
Odin throws the whetstone high into the air, and in their greedy scramble to catch it, the 9 servants accidentally slit each other's throats with their newly sharpened scythes.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Odin then goes to the giant, notes that he's suddenly short on labor, and offers to do the work of 9 men in exchange for a single sip of the mead.
It is so ruthless. He creates the labor shortage by orchestrating a mass murder just so he can fill the vacancy.
He's incredibly calculating.
And then, to actually get into the mountain vault, he literally shapeshifts into a snake and slithers through a microscopic hole he had drilled through solid rock.
Right, he gets his brother to drill the hole.
Yeah. And once inside, he seduces Gunnlod, the giant's daughter. He sleeps with her for 3 nights, and in return, she grants him 3 sips of the mead.
But he doesn't take sips.
No, he doesn't.
In 3 massive gulps, he drains all 3 enormous vats. He consumes every drop of poetry in the universe. Then, transforming into an eagle, he frantically flies back to Asgard with a giant Sutton hot on his tail, also in the form of an eagle.
Like a high-speed aerial pursuit.
Exactly. He barely makes it over the walls of Asgard, regurgitating the mead into vessels the other gods have hastily set out.
I have to bring up the detail the sources include here because it says so much about Viking humor.
Oh, the bad poetry origin.
Yes. As Odin is flying for his life, straining to get away from the giant, a little bit of the mead slips out of his back end.
Yep.
He literally poops out a fraction of the mead outside the walls of Asgard. And the lore states that anyone who partakes of that specific puddle becomes a terrible, hacky, amateur poet. The rhymers who just pump out garbage.
It is a brilliant piece of cultural humor. But the core of the myth really answers your earlier question, Why is the god of war the god of poetry? In the modern era, we separate the artist from the soldier.
Yeah, totally different spheres.
The Norse did not. To them, poetry wasn't mere entertainment. The skalds, the Norse poets, were the keepers of legacy. In a universe where Ragnarök is guaranteed, where the physical world is definitely going to burn, memory is the only thing that survives.
Ah, wow. Words outlive the flesh.
Exactly. For a god completely obsessed with surviving doom, poetry is the ultimate magic. It is the mechanism of immortality. If a warrior dies bravely, but no skald is there to weave his deeds into a poem, that warrior vanishes into nothingness.
So Odin steals the mead to ensure that the memory of greatness survives the end of the world.
Yes. Poetry is just another weapon in his arsenal against oblivion.
That reframes everything. The espionage, the shape-shifting, the aliases. It's all calculated. And speaking of aliases, the sources highlight that Odin has over 200 recorded names.
Over 200, yeah.
Grimnir, the masked one. Fjolnir, the concealer. Hangatyr, god of the hanged. He almost never appears as himself. He wanders the earth, disguised as an old man in a gray cloak with a wide-brimmed hat pulled down low to hide his missing eye.
Right, the classic Gandalf look, basically.
Exactly. It's like an intelligence director constantly moving through enemy territory, using burner identities and fake passports. If you cross paths with a ragged traveler, you have no idea if you're just talking to a beggar, or if the supreme judge of the cosmos is running a psychological stress test on you.
And that paranoia was woven deeply into Norse hospitality laws.
Yeah.
You treated strangers well because that stranger might literally be Odin testing your character. But the spycraft analogy goes far beyond his burner identities.
Right.
It extends to the incredibly complex surveillance network he maintains, represented by his animal companions. Because Odin is never alone.
The ravens. Hugin and Munin. Thought and memory.
Yes. Every morning at dawn, he releases them. They fly across the Nine World, observing the movements of giants, the affairs of men, the shifting of the cosmic tectonic plates. Every evening, they return and perch on his shoulders, whispering the raw data of the universe directly into his ears.
He is the ultimate information aggregator.
He really is.
But the psychological detail the poems give us about the ravens is what really stops you in your tracks. Because Odin says, I fear for Hugin that he may not return, but I fear more for Munin.
He is terrified of losing memory.
Right. And think about how fragile that makes his omniscience. We're used to gods who just intrinsically know everything. The Abrahamic god just knows. But Odin doesn't intrinsically know what's happening in Midgard. He has to deploy drones.
Yeah.
If someone shoots down his ravens, the supreme god goes blind and loses his mind. His power requires a massive daily, exhausting expenditure of energy just to maintain baseline operations.
It makes his wisdom a highly unstable quantum state, really. It requires constant observation to exist. And the portrait of his psychological burden becomes even more striking when you look down at his feet.
The wolves.
Sitting on the throne, alongside thought and memory, are two enormous wolves, Jerry and Freki. And both of their names translate roughly to the ravenous one or the greedy one.
And the sources say that when Odin sits at the high table, he takes all the meat presented to him and feeds it directly to the wolves. Odin himself consumes absolutely no food. He lives entirely on wine.
Wait, think about the physiological and metaphorical implications of that.
Ah.
You have God furiously consuming the data of the universe, but physically starving himself.
It's a crazy image.
The image of him on the throne is a portrait of a fractured psyche. Above him, perched by his head, are thought and memory, the high-level cerebral pursuit of cosmic truth. Below him, pacing at his feet, are hunger and greed, the visceral, insatiable, predatory drive to consume and conquer. He feeds the predatory instinct, but denies himself earthly sustenance. He is an ascetic warlord, wisdom and appetite bound together in one agonizingly tense system.
It's chilling. He's running on pure psychological momentum and wine, surrounded by wolves. But let's look at what he's actually doing with all this surveillance data. Because what is the output of this intelligence agency?
He's tracking the dead.
He is tracking the dead. He is looking for the optimal human assets to pull into his operation. Which brings us to Valhalla. And if there is one concept in Norse mythology that pop culture has completely sanitized and misunderstood, it's Valhalla.
Absolutely. The popular conception is that Valhalla is a glorious Viking heaven, a VIP lounge where brave warriors go to drink ale out of horns, sing songs, and enjoy an eternal, peaceful reward for a life well lived.
Like a frat party in the clouds.
Right. The reality presented in the source texts is vastly different and far more terrifying.
The architecture alone tells you this isn't a place of rest. The hall has a roof made entirely of overlapping golden shields. The rafters are massive spears, and the scale is industrial. There are 540 doors.
540.
And each door is so massively wide that 800 warriors can march out of it shoulder to shoulder simultaneously.
Which is an insane visual.
You do the math on that, and Valhalla houses an active standing army of 432,000 elite super soldiers. They are the Einherjar, the chosen slain, brought there by the Valkyries.
And we should clarify the role of the Valkyries here. Their name literally translates to choosers of the slain. They are not angels of mercy descending to comfort the dying.
No.
They are Odin's battlefield procurement officers. They hover over human conflicts, watch the carnage, and when a warrior displays exceptional violence, skill, and lack of fear, the Valkyrie tags them for extraction.
Extraction to the most brutal boot camp imaginable. Because once the Einherjar get to Valhalla, they don't get to relax. Every single morning, they wake up, strap on their armor, march out into the courtyard, and engage in a massive, chaotic battle to the death.
Every single day.
They hack off limbs, they cleave skulls, they literally butcher each other in the mud until everyone is dead. Then, as the sun sets, the magical physics of the realm kick in.
Right, the reset.
All the severed limbs reattach, the fatal wounds close, and the dead men wake up. They march into the hall, eat the meat of a magical regenerating boar named Sarimnir, drink themselves into a stupor, go to sleep, and repeat the exact same slaughter the next morning.
It is a machine learning algorithm for violence. It's running millions of daily simulations to train the perfect data set of warriors before the system crashes.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. An eternal simulation. Like Groundhog Day, but directed by a drill sergeant.
Valhalla is not a reward. It is endless conscription. Odin isn't giving these men a paradise. He is drafting them for a suicide mission.
For Ragnarok.
Yes. He is looking at the approaching timeline of Ragnarok, analyzing the threat of the giants and the cosmic monsters, and he realizes he needs a hardened, perfectly synchronized army. The daily slaughter in Valhalla is the only way to forge an army that won't break ranks when the sky literally tears open.
But wait, if we follow the logic of this algorithm, it completely changes Odin's role as a war god, doesn't it? And it leads to a massive moral contradiction. If Odin needs these human champions to be dead so they can train in Valhalla, what does that mean for the humans while they are still alive on Earth?
It means that if Odin favors you, your days are numbered.
Oh, man.
This is where Odin transitions from a calculating general to a terrifying betrayer. If you want a fair fight, if you want honorable combat and a long life, you pray to Thor or you pray to Tyr.
Okay.
Odin is the god of the battle madness. He's the patron of the berserkers, the warriors who fought in bear shirts, and the Ulfanar, the wolf skins. He gives them a psychological break, a trance-like fury where they feel no pain and literally bite their own shields.
Uncontrollable rage.
But more insidiously, he actively cultivates greatness in mortals, specifically to harvest them.
The sources show him deliberately betraying his own assets. And it's not just a passive withdrawal of support, like he just looks away. It's an active sabotage.
Like with Sigmund.
Yes, look at the saga of Sigmund the Volsung. Odin literally gives Sigmund a magical sword, Graham, by thrusting it into a tree in a grand display. Sigmund uses this sword to become the greatest hero of his age, winning battle after battle, trusting completely in the Allfather's blessing.
He's the star player.
Right. But then, when Sigmund is an old man fighting his final, most desperate battle, Odin himself walks onto the battlefield in his disguise. He raises his spear, Sigmund strikes it with the magical sword, and Odin shatters the blade.
He breaks the very weapon he gave him.
He intentionally disarms his own champion and lets him be slaughtered. It's like a sports coach intentionally injuring his own star player during the championship game. Why would you ever worship a god who is actively plotting your death?
You have to ask why a general would murder his own star player, right? The brutal logic is that a living hero on Earth is completely useless to Odin's grand strategy.
Oh.
He doesn't need legends walking around Midgard. He needs generals in Valhalla. He nurtures a human's potential, tests them through decades of horrific hardship, and the moment they reach their absolute peak lethality, he pulls the plug.
He cashes out the investment. It's horrifying. Like, congratulations, you are the greatest warrior alive. Your prize is a spear through the chest.
Exactly.
Are you telling me the Norse actively worshipped a god they fundamentally knew was going to stab them in the back?
Yes. They embraced the transaction. Worshipping Odin was a high-stakes gamble with your own soul. You were asking for the power to achieve unparalleled, immortal fame, knowing full well that the cost of that fame was an early, violent death orchestrated by the god who gave it to you.
Wow.
You weren't praying for safety, you were praying to burn twice as bright for half as long.
Which perfectly explains why there was such a massive class divide in who actually worshipped him. Because if I'm a 9th century turnip farmer, I don't want to burn twice as bright. I just want my turnips to grow, and I don't want wolves to eat my children.
Exactly. The archaeological evidence, the place names, the runic inscriptions, they all consistently show that Odin was not the most popular god among the common people.
Who was?
He was vastly eclipsed by Thor. Thor was the god of the masses. Thor was reliable. If you prayed to Thor to bring the rains and smash the frost giants threatening your crops, Thor just did it.
Thor is the blue-collar hometown hero.
Yeah. Thor was the protector of humanity. He was the god of the now. He maintained the status quo.
Right. He's straightforward, he fights face-to-face, he drinks heavily, and he keeps the lights on. Odin, on the other hand, is like the unpredictable billionaire politician playing an incomprehensible game of 4D chess in the shadows.
That's a great way to put it.
He might uplift your family to royalty, or he might plunge your entire kingdom into a 20-year civil war just to test the combat effectiveness of a new generation of soldiers.
He is the god of kings, ambitious warlords, outlaws, poets, and sorcerers. He is the god of the elite, and he is the god of the end.
The god of the end. That is the perfect pivot to the final, most crucial piece of this entire deep dive. Because we have established that Odin's entire existence is a frantic, morally bankrupt scramble for resources.
Yep.
He sacrifices his body, he steals magic, he builds a massive espionage network, he harvests human souls, all to prepare for Ragnarok. But the central tragedy of Odin, the thing that elevates him from a mere tyrant to a figure of profound, agonizing nobility, is his absolute knowledge of how it ends. He doesn't just suspect the apocalypse is coming, he's read the final page of the script.
Right. He performs the ultimate act of seer, of necromancy. He travels to the edge of hell, finds the grave of an ancient vulva, a seeress, and literally forces her corpse out of the dirt to demand the future.
Pulls her right out of the grave.
This prophecy is recorded in the poem Völuspá. And she doesn't hold back. She lays out the entire sequence of the end of the world. The long winter, the splitting of the sky, the march of the fire giants. But the most devastating piece of intel she gives him is his own specific time of death.
She looks the supreme god in his one eye and tells him the blunt, inescapable truth. Despite his millions of Einherjar, despite the magic of the runes, despite the stolen wisdom of the mead,
None of it saves him.
when the final battle is joined, he will ride out in his golden helmet to face the great cosmic wolf Fenrir. And Fenrir will open his jaws so wide that they scrape the earth and the heavens, and the wolf will swallow the Allfather whole.
He loses.
He loses. He knows for 100% mathematically certain fact that he is going to lose. And this is where my modern brain just stalls out.
Why do it all then?
Exactly. If you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are going to die and your enemies are going to win, why bother? Why rip out your eye? Why hang on a tree? Why betray your best friends? If the system is rigged and the wolf always wins, wouldn't a rational entity just sit on the throne, pet the ravens, drink the wine, and wait for the end? Why fight a war you know you cannot win?
Because surrender is the one thing the Allfather is incapable of doing. And this hits at the absolute philosophical bedrock of Norse mythology, the concept of weird or fate.
Okay.
Weird in Norse mind, the threads of destiny are woven by the Norns at the base of the world tree. The weave is set. You cannot change what happens to you. The wolf is coming and the wolf will eat you. However, you have absolute control over how you face the wolf.
The outcome is fixed, but your posture is not.
Precisely. The psychological difference between trying to change the future, which is futile, and preparing to meet it optimally is immense. Odin's maniacal preparation isn't about changing the final score. He isn't trying to rewrite the prophecy.
He's just preparing.
He is preparing to face his unavoidable end with magnificent, terrifying defiance. He intends to ride into the jaws of the wolf armed with every scrap of knowledge, backed by the greatest army ever assembled, completely refusing to bow to despair.
Wow.
In the Norse worldview, the universe is inherently unfair, and the forces of chaos will eventually consume the forces of order. But the fight itself, the refusal to go quietly, is where your honor lies. The ferocious dignity of fighting a doomed battle is the ultimate human and divine achievement.
The ferocious dignity of fighting a doomed battle. That is, wow, you look at his entire arc, he knows he's doomed, but he fights for every inch of ground anyway. He uses the runes, he weaves the magic, he drinks the mead to ensure the poetry outlives the fire. It's a beautifully dark theology.
It really is.
We've completely stripped away the grandfatherly, benevolent god of pop culture today. We've found the one-eyed wanderer, the deceiver, the hacker of reality, the god who looks absolute zero in the face and charges at it with a spear. It is an astonishingly complex portrait of a deity.
Unmatched, really.
And as a quick tease for you listeners, our next deep dive is going to pivot entirely. Having looked at the shadowy architect of doom, we're going to explore the god the common people actually loved, the thunderer, Thor, and the volatile trickster who finally breaks Odin's system, Loki. You'll not want to miss that.
It'll be a brilliant contrast. But before we leave the Allfather behind, I want you, the listener, to consider one final lingering thought. Look at what Odin represents. He's a being who spends his entire existence furiously gathering knowledge, making art through poetry, building vast networks of connection, and striving for greatness, all while possessing the absolute certainty that his world is doomed.
Right.
Isn't that just a magnified mirror of the human condition? We all know with absolute biological certainty that our own end is coming. Our personal Ragnarok is guaranteed. We are all finite.
So true.
So when you look at your own life, how much of your drive to learn, to build, to create, and to tell your story is simply your own inner Odin, defiantly preparing to face the wolf at the door?
We all have the wolf waiting for us, so we might as well give up an eye to see the truth of it and keep swinging the spear until the very end. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.